Okay, I think we're going. So now I have to remember how to start a video. You get to see my process in real time. I think it's, hey adventurers, welcome to an Erudite adventure. Today we're going to be having a discussion regarding the Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin TV series. And we just wanted to talk about this, talk about our thoughts in regards to it, and mostly just talk about how it is as an adaptation of the books, kind of. I'll let my other two guests introduce themselves. Go ahead, Liam.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Liam from Liam's Lyceum. Or at least that's where I make most of my videos. And yes, I'm here. Thanks to you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's something I wanted to do. Go ahead.
Then I'm Sam from iSamwise, booktuber and big fan of the Wahhead books. So happy
I'm glad you have your books beside you.
about them.
I meant to grab mine and I didn't get them.
But I don't have any of them physically. So.
The other ones here. So thank you,
Benny. I listened. Oh yeah, I listened to all except Aurelia on audiobook because they were all free on Audible at the time. They're no longer free on Audible, and so I don't have any of them anymore. But I did get Aurelia physically. I bought that, and so now I have that one as well. But I also want to thank Sam for sending me the ebook because that's that allowed me to read the ebook. So that was cool, super cool of him. They don't really incorporate Aurelia into this show. Potentially they could in the future, but they also kind of, you know what, I think it's a little bit of a discussion for an Aurelia review or discussion, but it seems like they kind of condense some things and rearrange some things for the sake of the new medium. And I'm not terribly mad about that, especially getting through the entire series and seeing how they did it. And they had a cool behind the scenes. It was an interview with the cast and crew where they discussed why they made some of the changes that they did. And basically it was because as much as it would have been awesome to see an entire series or season dedicated to Taliesin in the book, that's not really feasible in a television setting where you have to attach the viewers to a set of characters so that you can then move them on into following seasons. And so what they did is they sped up the Taliesin process so they could get to Merlin, who would then carry them through the rest of the series. I think you could have done a little bit of having Karis be the focus of the series, but she does kind of, in the later books, she does kind of fade off into the background a little bit more. So I do understand their reasoning there. I think part of what I want to do with this is kind of start off with a little bit of a non-spoiler, just kind of thoughts on the show. Do we think that it was good, well done? Do we want more of it type stuff? And then we'll go a little bit deeper into the episodes a little bit maybe and see if we have specific thoughts on episodes or whatever. So Liam, you want to start us off, or you just muted so we can go to Samwise if we want?
No, I'm good. Yes, I can start us off. I have great opinions. No, I actually have really mild opinions. I don't really have a ton of thoughts. I feel like, broadly speaking, I enjoyed the show at it's only like 7 episodes.
7 episodes, yeah.
Yeah. So, lucky odd number there. But yeah, I mean, I think overall it was enjoyable. I do really like the first few with the Taliesin stuff more than say I mean, to be honest, I think like Merlin is a pretty compelling character in the show. Yeah. Aurelius and Uther are not my favorites, but they're not my favorites in the books either. Right. And but overall, the show is entertaining. I think it's very gripping for the start. I mean, just like in the books as well, Taliesin is just like a great intro. It's not super Arthurian in a lot of ways, but like that's the best part. And so, and just Karis, her opening stuff. It's all. I mean, it was super shortened, right? But it's all really good.
Right.
And overall, the show is pretty satisfying up until the end, that final battle sequence type of thing, kind of the flashbacks we're getting throughout, or well, more so near the end. Yeah, I think overall it was pretty satisfying. My only really one big thing that I wasn't a huge fan of was the gore. It was actually a bit gorier than I was expecting. And I'm just a baby. But
and also you had a problem with the pronunciation of the Saxon leader's name.
Oh yeah, shoot, Hengist. That's how you say it. I think they said Hengist the entire time.
Yeah.
Or something. So
I've only ever heard it Hengist, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's
it's
wrong.
Old English has a couple ways where spellings where you get the j sound. It's mostly CG, like bridge. It's BRICG or whatever, right? In Old English, and but it's also if you have a front vowel like an I or an E, like a sound with then an ng, henge, right? Henges,
Mhm.
right? The enjon,
Right.
which means like a worshiper, kind of, right?
So,
So
etymology word or question here, since we're kind of on the topic, does henges, the word, have any relation to hinge, like in Stonehenge?
no, henges means like stallion, actually.
Okay.
It only survives in the word henchman,
Okay.
which means
Interesting.
like horse person. It's a servant,
Right.
like stable boy, essentially.
Interesting.
So,
This is what I do to Liam all the time. I
Yeah.
just, hey, how are these two words related? All right. And Sam, what are your thoughts on the show?
Yeah, okay, so historically I tend to be pretty forgiving of
Right.
adaptations. So like classic example, I love the Hobbit movies. I know that there's a
Mm-hmm.
ton of stupid stuff in them and a ton of things that are different from the books, and I love those movies. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. So I tend to be pretty forgiving of adaptations. However, as I said before, these Pendragon Cycle books, they mean a lot to me. I don't quite know why they struck such a chord with me, but I would say right now they're probably in my top 10 favorite like fantasy series. And a part of that may just be because there's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of as to why that is. A part of it may be that like they're good and there's nothing in it that like significantly pissed me off. And there's some
Right.
fantasy series where I like most of it, and then there's just some things that just piss me off, and so it like docks at enough points. So I'm, to a certain extent, I'm pretty attached to these books. So going into it, it's like, okay, how are you? Adaptation means you're going to be changing things. So how are they going to change things? And so I'm positive. Um, I'm not overwhelmingly positive though.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
so I want to see. I would love to see a second season, and maybe that's something we can talk about where they would go with that. And in fact, I think Arthur and Pendragon, those two books that they'd cover in a second season, would be improved by adapting them and changing
Yes.
some things.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see a second season, but I have, and maybe this is just the book fanboy being like, actually, like I do have like quibbles
Yeah.
with the show, as well as there are some sequences that I think were like ripped. It felt like it was ripped straight out of my brain and like perfectly put on screen. So there are some parts of it that I deeply loved, and then some parts that I'm gonna quibble and nitpick about. But overall, I would say I'm positive. I think that the main, like one of the highlights for me is I thought that the main cast was very, very good. So Tom Sharp as Merlin, I think is it
Yeah.
her name, Rose Reed as
Yep.
Karis, were both real standouts. The guy who played Taliesin, for having relatively limited screen time.
Yes.
Um,
James Alden, I believe, is his name, or Arden.
okay,
Arden or Alden, I don't remember.
yeah, I
But
thought he was really good, and like Brett Cooper was
yeah.
good in
Right.
it as well,
Yeah.
which who knew. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. I thought that the cast was good. I also thought the music, the
Oh
soundtrack
yes.
to it, was really really good. I don't know. I have some specific scenes that I want to talk about and highlight about, but if we're just giving some broad general overview, I would say that. Um, and I would also say there are a couple of points where they did something a little odd or a little unique in terms of how they adapted it that I thought was really interesting. So even though I have some quibbles in some places, there are some parts where I thought they did something really clever. So anyway, I'll shut up for now, but that's sort of a preamble.
Yeah. All right. So really quickly though, because my thoughts are very similar to both of yours, I enjoyed it greatly. I thought that it was every time I sat down to watch an episode, I was basically glued to the screen, just very invested in the way that they were adapting and telling the story. I From the moment that it was announced, I'd known of the series for a very long time. In fact, I'd had the books on my shelf for before the series was announced, or Taliesin at least. And was wanted to read it. I love Arthurian literature. It's probably my favorite myth. And so I just wanted to read it, knew I needed to read it. When they finally announced it, it's like, all right, I've got to actually read this. I would love to be in it if I had the opportunity, but I wasn't in a position to do that. But I went to the series. So I went to the books and I read the first book, and I didn't have any other audiobooks at the time to just stick in the next a different audiobook. And so I was like, okay, well, whatever, let's just read the next audiobook. And I did that with all 5 of the books. And it's the first series I binged in years, and was blown away. Again, the first 2 books are absolutely the best. Merlin and or Taliesin and Merlin are the best of the books for sure. But then the following 3, even though individually they're not great, as a whole and as the Pendragon Cycle as a whole, I thought was really strong and really good. And I do agree, it's become one of my favorite series, and means a whole lot to me in ways that I'm not entirely sure why, because I have my quibbles, especially with like pacing in that first book, especially. But Taliesin is still my favorite book and one of my favorite characters I've ever read and everything like that. But then, so taking that love of the series, that I had binged a series for the first time in who knows how long, and then taking that into the series, into the show, I was very pleasantly surprised with, very excited to go to begin with, but then very pleasantly surprised with a lot of what I was seeing. There were definitely some things, and this is kind of my one of the things that I would talk to anybody about, just in terms of feedback towards the show, is they claim that it's super high quality, and it really is. It's very, very high quality, but it's not as high as everybody claims that it is. There's some things that are just like, that could have been done just a little bit better, that could have been just a little bit tighter. Cinematography could have been just a little bit better, or something. And it's very high, but it's not as high as everybody's claiming. But it's still very, very good. And so I definitely enjoy that aspect. I do have some quibbles. I do, some of the changes from the books, I thought did not work terribly well. It messed with timelines mostly, and that was kind of almost a turnoff in some ways, in the sense that I didn't love the way that it was going. I thought that had we had, well, mostly I wanted to spend more time with Taliesin. And so had we spent more time with the story of Taliesin, then I would have been a lot more forgiving to those sorts of things. But again, the way that they had to do it, and then especially hearing their reasoning for why they made the changes that they did, why they crunched the timeline so much, I get it. I'm okay, and I'm able to look back and be like, okay, I can accept your reasoning for this. I'm getting long-winded already with my thoughts here, but yeah, overall, I did enjoy the series. Really enjoyed the first episodes with Taliesin. Those were by far my favorite, although I do think that there was some stronger episodes towards the later half that are probably stronger than the first 2. 2 or 3, I forget how many are Taliesin.
2.
First 2, okay. But because of how much I love that first book, and how much I love the character of Taliesin and the portrayal in this show of him, those first 2 episodes are my favorite of the show because of that. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. Just a really non-spoiler overview. I would love to see another season. I wish that they were already in production on the second season, so that we could be getting it sooner. It sounds like they're waiting to see how well it's received and how much money it makes before they decide to produce another season, which is understandable. But also, I've been wanting a long-running series, Arthuriana series, since Merlin ended, BBC Merlin, and we haven't gotten one. And so I would like this to be it, one that's actually really good, really high quality, and this has a potential to be that.
Yeah. This is higher quality than BBC's Merlin.
Production quality is very much higher, but Merlin's very good series as well. It's got a lot of great things going for it. In fact, that's another discussion that could be had, is how they chose to create that show as a Arthurian tale. Yeah. Anything else non-spoilery before we just dive in and start going episode by episode?
No, I'm sure there are things that we'll cover that aren't specifically spoilers, but I don't have anything generally in terms of overview.
All right. Well, the last time I did a series discussion was Rings of Power Season 1. And so I've got all these banners that are in here already. Like that one. But we'll use the one that we need here. Spoilers. Yeah. So to start off with, there are 7 episodes. The first 2 cover the book Taliesin, and the last 5 cover the book Merlin. And I think actually there's more of Merlin that has yet to be covered, if I remember correctly. But I don't know the books terribly well. I would love to reread them at some point. But just so they really speed up the whole process. They cut out a lot of the Atlantis stuff in this first episode, and that's kind of disappointing because I would have loved to see that, because the Atlantis myth is another myth that I absolutely love.
Right.
And I would have loved to see Karis's growth as a person and as a character, because that it starts with her as a young girl, and then she grows up to become the bull dancer that she is, and that then that leads to the fall of Atlantis. And
Right.
we kind of
There's a lot
cut
more.
all of that out.
Yeah.
There's
I mean,
a
right,
lot
it's-
there. There's a lot of lore that's cut with what it means, what the asteroids mean, and everything. Meteors, whatever they're called, that sink Atlantis, that are the cause for the sinking of Atlantis. That's cut. There's an entire character that's cut. That's an important character to the series. I think my mic's acting weird. Are you guys hearing that fuzz?
Sounds fine to me so far.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Well, we'll pretend like it's just me then. But yeah, I would have loved to see more of that. What they did show was good. I thought especially the bull dancing was appropriately brutal, but also very flashy and very spectacle. It was a lot of spectacle, and it felt fitting for what was going on there. I mean, I have a whole list of a whole note full of thoughts on regards to this first episode, but I want to kind of incorporate you all into the discussion as well.
I mean, I
This
think
kind of
I think I do miss the development of Karis. I was Cars when I read the book, but as a character, right? Because right, yeah, she starts as a young girl before she does this boring like Knossos type of thing going on, but it's Atlantis, which is appropriate. Which is, again, I don't know, sorry. Sometimes I make references and I don't actually explain myself. And Knossos, the ancient city on Crete, which seemingly Crete might be the basis of the Atlantic myth. Anyway, so, and there's bull dancers. They're known for bull dancers. Anyway, the whole scene, I'm glad they incorporated that scene, right? Like that's really like the biggest scene you get on Atlantis. But they cut out a lot. I mean, you cut out even like the start of the war and the corrupting power of certain things. I think they cut out or do they cut it out completely? The Leah Fall, I think, if that I remember correctly.
They didn't cut it out completely, but it's very much reduced in its presence.
Yeah. Right. So mostly the saddest thing about the show in some sense is how much they cut out of Taliesin, which you already mentioned why in a sense, but that is the best book. So
Yes.
And like Boring has talked about that, like Merlin is his favorite out of the series, and that it's been super formational for him. So like that's not surprising that it's like this is mainly, I mean, and they even changed the name of the show like halfway through production from just Pendragon Cycle to specifically Rise of the Merlin. It's like, oh, do you get which one is going to be the emphasized one here? It's like, okay, that makes sense.
I mean, Merlin is like the narrator of most of the books, so it really does like the fit.
And definitely the framing narrative for the books as well as the show is very much Merlin and his character and his rise. And so it makes a lot of sense why they would adapt it in the way that they did, including all the reasons why they had to expedite some of the story beats so that they could actually you could follow a character that you would be interested in. I get it. I do get it.
I will say, just in terms of like what they included though, I think that first episode has my favorite and what I think is the best moment in the entire show, which is when they have that big banquet scene and Taliesin and his tribe has journeyed there, and Taliesin gets up and he sings. Yes. And he and Karis have this like shared like kinetic vision. That is like that I think was the moment where I got chills the strongest in the show.
Yep.
That whole sequence there where it's like you know that something happened in the bull ring and you got like a taste of it, but then seeing like the fullness of it, and there also being this connection with Taliesin, and that amazing scene earlier on in that episode with him and the standing stones, which I thought that was pretty metal. I like that sequence as well.
Yes.
But then this like connection of like, we've both been contacted by demons, haven't we? Okay, now what do we do about this? I thought that sequence was really spectacular in the editing, music, all of it.
Yes. I will also say, since we noted on it, although we get more of it in later episodes, I forget the name that they use for the Britain dark god demon creature, but that thing is terrifying. Like, that is one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. So good job on that. But I agree that banquet scene is fantastic. The music, unfortunately, I discovered Arden didn't sing the song. He tried to, but he's not a vocalist, and so they had to bring someone in to dub over him, which is disappointing, but also understandable. And they did a good job at finding a voice that matches similar to the actor's voice. So good job on that. But that sequence, fantastic sequence, definitely one of my favorite, but it leads into my actual favorite of the entire series, which is Taliesin and Karis on the balcony, just having the discussions about each other, essentially, and their potential relationship, and just the undertones of that. For some reason, that sequence worked very, very well for me. I thought that was, besides the fact that it's beautiful, the set, the costume design, just gorgeous. That scene felt so intentional, intimate, just very powerful to me. But yeah, good stuff in that first episode.
Yeah, I think generally the first episode was a good intro, and I definitely like that hall scene. Yes, with Taliesin singing, definitely a highlight there. I mean, it's interesting because I do think, like, again, going back to them cutting out so much that Karis, it's just Karis. No, but is just less, like, I don't know. She's like, a lot of her character is really, really cool in the books, and it just getting it. Like, you can see that she's been through some crap,
Yeah.
in the show, right? So they did that well enough, right? But we don't get to see it in a sense, right? We just get like this tiny glimpse, and like in the ring, right? And so, I don't know. I was happier in some sense with Taliesin's character, but so
I do agree. I think so. The note that I wrote about the Karis actress, the Rose Reed, is she's good, but the character is more dour than I interpreted her to be.
Right. Same.
And I think that's because of how much they had to cut of the character's journey, that you saw some of that. But she definitely was not quite as she reminds me a lot of Galadriel in the books, where she's just a wise. She's calmed down a lot, and I didn't get quite that sense from her in the show. You kind of get more of that as the episodes progress, but in those first ones, it was definitely a bit more upfront than I was expecting it to be with that. But I do think she's good, but just Taliesin is my favorite character.
My favorite scene with Karis, and I think, is it in the first or the second episode where the monks confuse her for Mary?
That's the first episode.
Such a fun scene.
I like that, and which is great, actually, because Mary is full of grace, and that's what Karis means. Karis is just Greek for grace. But I just say,
duh. Obviously, yeah.
We all knew that, of course.
Yeah, she's Atlantean, but she has a Greek name, of course.
Right.
Well, and Karis, like, she plays a like Mother Mary type of role in the series.
Yeah.
Like, it's so like, yeah, obviously that makes sense.
This is why we have Liam on.
Yeah.
I have my biggest thoughts on names is the name of Merlin, actually, which is actually it's what Sam, you made me think of when you said it's one of your favorite series, and I was like, it would probably be one of my favorite series if it didn't piss me off in intervals. Like, and it's mostly on how it handles like Saxons, which I just find like silly. Or the one book that has is it Vandals? Which I'm like, this is like the most insanely random thing ever. Right? I was like, this is actually in some sense feasible, so I couldn't hate on it too much. But like, because like timeline wise, it kind of actually made a little sense. But the name Merlin does not mean hawk. It is not. So that's my like my
I
biggest gripe with
think
Lawhead himself.
um, so. I think part of my reason why I don't have these problems is because I tend to focus on, is it telling a good story more than is everything perfectly accurate? And because of that, I can set aside my even when I do know about the things that are not accurate, I can set them aside because the story that's being told is so good and so compelling. And I think that's largely the case with what happened with this series, because really it took me a long time to get through that first third of Taliesin. I read the first third physically, and it was a drag in a lot of ways, and took me a lot longer to get through it than I wanted to. And so eventually I was just like, all right, let's get the audiobook and get through this and hope that I actually enjoy it, which then I did. And it really, I needed to get as interesting, and as much as I love the Atlantis stuff, it was really boring and in a lot of ways to me. So like I wanted to get through that and get into the actual story. I have a lot of thoughts on that book. That book was really
Right.
influenced me in a lot of ways, and I saw myself reflected in a lot of ways, which is
Yeah.
interesting and not something that I had expected at all. But anyways, because of that, because I am able to just look at, is this telling a good story? I'm not nearly so bothered by, is it perfectly accurate?
Just
So
which just IE in short is Liam is a pedant. Anyways, so but yeah, no, that I agree actually in a sense. Like, and actually that's not really Lawhead's mistake. I think Stewart says the same thing in her
mm-hmm.
Merlin books. And I don't know
Mm.
if she's the first one to do it either. And it's an easy mistake because there is a word Merlin in English which means hawk. So
Oh,
like,
okay.
that's just
But it's a
not
different Merlin.
Merlin. The word Merlin that means hawk in English is a Germanic word, and I don't need to go into the etymology of it. But the word Merlin as the name for the character Merlin comes from Welsh Myrddin, which is called also right Myrddin Emrys or whatever. Um, Myrddin is just a city. Maradunum. It's literally just the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Carmathan,
okay.
whatever,
Okay.
right? That's probably why he's not a real person. He probably was not a real person. He's probably a composite character based off a couple, maybe real people. That doesn't matter here. I won't get into it. But the name Myrddin just means sea forts, right? And but you don't have that sound. The two D's makes it sound Welsh, and you don't have that sound in Latin. And so when you turn that sound into Latin, it would become a D just by default, which would be Merlin. If anyone knows Spanish or French or Romance languages, the word for poop, actually the inappropriate word for poop, the S word for poop, is really close to that. Okay. And so Jeffrey of Monmouth is like, yeah, there's no way. And so he just changes the D to L, which is actually also another common Latin sound change. He changed like calamity, actually in old Latin's cadamity, as stupid as that sounds, right? I mean, so like,
Yeah.
he just changes it. It's an L, you know.
Makes
So.
sense. Yeah. Well, for sake of actually making progress through the series in a reasonable amount
My
of time, no, it's not your fault at all. I talked a long time too. Do we have any kind of, I guess, kind of my thoughts of the series as a whole, or of the first episode? I mean, I touched on some of the things, but I thought that it moved really fast. I thought the pacing was, they're cutting out a lot, which we already discussed a little bit, but the pacing was very, very quick. I feel like to some degree, a more experienced showrunner could have been beneficial. And from that first episode, I wasn't sure if this was a good adaptation or not yet. I enjoyed what I saw, but I wasn't sure that I liked the way that they were going with it yet, because obviously it's one of 7 pieces of this first season. And then one other little note: the actress they picked for Ronwyn, the mother of Taliesin, she's exactly what I imagined when I read the book. Like, picture perfect, exactly who I imagined. And I've never seen the actress before, but yeah, it's just weird. Yeah. Any other final thoughts on episode 1?
One brief comment, and this applies to, I guess, both episode 1 and I think in episode 2 as well. One of the things that I think makes the early episodes really strong is the presence of Morgaine as a
Mhm.
character, and I don't remember how heavily involved she was in the novel Merlin, so I can't really fault them for not having her more in the show. But I felt like every single episode that she was in was significantly better by having her presence. And maybe it's just like maybe I was just wanting more of an antagonist, or maybe I just like her so much as a bad guy from the books. But the parts where she was in, especially in those first couple of episodes, I thought were like excellent. And it was, as we were later on in the show, it was like, man, like, well, I wish we could have a little bit more of like Morgaine like trying to pull strings or trying to do things throughout the show.
I think she's a great foil to Karis in particular in the books. She's kind of more playing off Merlin, maybe a little bit in the show. I mean, not initially, I guess, in the first episodes, but she's creepy. I mean, that horse,
yes, very creepy. That one and the sequence in the last episode.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is one of the things that they could have. Yeah, the last episode, but that's one thing. Again, with Karis, I kind of like T mentioned. I imagine Karis a little different in my mind when I read the books. That they seem very strictly to be foils in the sense that like Karis is full of grace and beauty, but she's also this like emblem of love, essentially, right? Well, Morg or whatever her name is, that Morg character, that she's like this emblem of lust, essentially, right? And you definitely get that. But the contrast isn't as strong, and also in some ways, just because also even Karis in those first episodes is wearing rather revealing clothes, and so yeah, it's just not as strong there. But
cool. I don't have a ton of thoughts on episode 2 that are any different. Like I just jotted down some notes as I was seeing them. So I'll just read through them really quick, and if anybody wants to comment on them, they're welcome to. But I had conversation with Halfgan in the tent is great. Halfgan is also a super cool character. I really liked what they did with him in the series. The vision of Taliesin was excellently done. That sequence where, I mean, just the landscapes that you were showing, everything about it, and Arden's performance of it was excellent, in my opinion. I didn't care for the change to Taliesin's death. That's a big one for me. That was a little bit of a this is not how it was done in the book. I don't think I like this. But again, understanding why they chose to do it that way, I understand it, even if I don't love it terribly much. Big disservice to the best book in the series by cutting it to 2 episodes. I would have loved an entire season just for book 1. And then James Arden is super good in the series. So those are my just general notes for the episode. I didn't really have anything to complain about other than that it was the change to Taliesin's death and the fact that they cut it to 2 episodes.
And I agree with you, T, on Taliesin's death. Like, it's like, oh man, because that scene, like, I'm not very visual when I read, but that scene of Taliesin's death in the book, I have like very vivid memories of like how I imagined that. And yet that sequence of like Merlin being born and being like stillborn and Taliesin like singing life into him, I also think is like one of the most powerful bits in the show. I just and maybe that's just like, you know, the dad stuff is an easy heartstring pull for me, but like I that was my favorite part from that second episode.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the dream or vision or whatever of Taliesin.
The title of the episode was The Vision of Taliesin. In the book, they call it The Dream of Taliesin.
Okay, right. Okay, that makes sense. I think that's well done. I think it's mostly well done because in the book, that is like the best lines from the entire series.
Well, it's literally the driving force behind the entire series.
Right.
It's the theme of the entire series.
Right. So, but it's easy to work with in a sense in the show because they just pretty much had to not do a terrible job for it.
Yeah.
To, you know,
this is true.
Be good. So, and so they did fine. But yeah, the scene, I think the scene with Merlin's birth is very, very touching. Again, maybe that's because I've been president, my children's birth, you know, and it's just like a very touching scene. I do kind of agree that it's just like, it's super abrupt after that though. Right. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about that, but the scene up until that point is great.
You could even do that exact same sequence. You could have cut all the stuff between the birth of Merlin and the death of Taliesin. You could have cut all that out and just cut to them riding back through the trees where he gets killed in the book. And it would have, I mean, you maybe added 2 minutes onto the series. I know it's location and money and like from a production standpoint, it's very different. But
Right. It's also not like restricted to like a TV thing though, right? Because this is produced by this company, so they could have made it actually 2 minutes longer. Again, I'm sure
they
it
could
might
have,
have, right?
yeah,
But not
right,
not restricted by like commercials technically.
yeah.
Since we're in the opening couple episodes where there's a lot of Atlantis stuff, I've been thinking about this since I knew we were going to be chatting with Liam. Like one of the things that they talked about in behind the scenes is like, we got like this linguist to come in and like create, an Atlantean like language, or at least some structure of a language. Like, how'd you feel about that? As somebody who specializes in languages and stuff, did they do a good job? Were you laughing? What was your thought on that?
Well, I didn't watch any of the behind the scenes stuff actually. I remember talking to T, and you mentioned it. You mentioned it quite a bit, T. I feel like, but I didn't watch any of it. But yeah, I think the language, it sounds fine. When I first heard it, actually, I didn't know it was construction. I was like, I wonder what that is, right? I'm like, what could they have done? Like, did they try to do like some like Hebrew or like ancient Greek or something? But my knowledge of those languages is not very great. And I was mostly I started wondering about it when they have the Saxons speak something, which I assume is Old English, but I actually am not sure still, because I didn't go back and rewatch it, and I was like, because even Merlin, actually, the TV show Merlin we mentioned already has a lot of Old English. They butcher it terribly, right? And you cannot tell that it's Old English, right? Essentially, and so I'm like,
a lot
okay,
of it sounds like Latin. But
yeah, I mean, these people at the time, the Britons would have probably someone was spoken Latin, but yeah, the Saxons I assume speak Old English. That's an assumption though. I have no clue because I didn't go back. I didn't try to like break apart what they were saying. But yeah, I think actually the invented language, even though we don't get a ton of it, it's really, I mean, the whole show is not that long, and so the Atlanteans, I guess you get it when you get the Atlanteans that come up, right? I think it sounds fine. I mean, I assume whoever they hired knows what they're. I didn't look to see who it was. I mean, I know my pal I've had on here before, Logan Kearsley. He does some other things, like helping people with constructed languages and stuff like that. But it sounded fine. I like that they went through the effort to do it. So I hope they went through the effort to have the Old English sound correct. Because again, I didn't actually go back and watch it, but I mean, because it's like, well, what's that one show? It's about like the Romans and like I think the Germanic people, but they speak like modern German or something. Or in like one movie, they speak Swahili, like the Germanic people. It doesn't make any sense. So I actually have no clue what they did here. But I like the effort of them going through and making a constructed language, and it sounded fine. I mean, just by ear. Obviously, it's nonsense technically, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts on episode 2? And we can come back to them if as necessary.
I mean, it's just a nice, like, well, nice. Again, they cut out a lot, but it's a good segue, relatively fast segue into Merlin as a character, who is the main guy. So.
I do appreciate that, although it is very much an adult show, it's not for. Definitely, I wouldn't give it to children. It's clean for the most part. Like there's implied stuff, but for the most part, it's fairly clean, other than the gore. And I appreciated that. That's I was hoping that would be the case, because the books, there's more in the books that could have been adapted onto the screen less appropriately, and they chose to be more appropriate with it. So I appreciate that.
Actually,
which also does make sense with the way that they with who's producing it and everything.
Yeah, T, with these first couple episodes, actually, this was another question I had for both of you guys. And the first 2 episodes provide a great spot to bring this up. Remind me, when Taliesin starts singing over like the birth of Merlin, does the rain freeze? Am I imagining that, or does it keep raining
in the episode?
Yeah,
it stops. I don't know if it completely stops or if it just freezes in place, but it does that. Yes, I did notice that as well.
Okay, because here's one thing that I noticed. It seemed to me that the magic in the show is ramped up from the book, and there's a lot of like, because Taliesin, like there seems to be even quite a bit of like ambiguity as to like what is sorcery, witchcraft, like stuff that's like the pagan stuff, and like what is like, are these that hideous strength style, like from
Right.
C.S. Lewis? Are these like wizards just like now open channels that like God's power is now able to flow through them too, which is like sort of what
Right.
happens in that hideous strength. So I wonder if you guys had like thoughts on that or how they're playing it, because presumably, like as with all Arthur stuff, like, okay, is this just like a Game of Thrones where it's a completely alternate world, like with new rules, or is it trying to play sort of historical fiction as well?
Well, the books are definitely more playing in the historical fiction realm, but um, I don't think they had an inappropriate amount of magic as an adaptation of the book. It's definitely more visual, um, but it's a visual medium, so you kind of want to play to the strengths of the medium to some degree. Um, I think that it's, if I can remember the thought that I had regarding it. Oh, that's what it was. As far as realisticness of it, or factuality, or whatever you want to say, um, I tend to believe that there's more. Let's word it this way: that dark magic exists a lot more than people pretend. And so seeing things like that in action in a series like this, especially the way that they're doing it, and especially with it being a fantasy TV series and a Arthurian TV series, it didn't bother me. So that's kind of the way that I viewed it. Although it did notice the ramp up of it in the show.
Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly from the books, the books get progressively less magical.
Until Grail.
As you say, except
Yeah,
for Grail,
right.
that was
Until then,
pretty.
I mean, like
crazy.
Aurelia is not magical really at all, but that
Correct.
makes sense for what it follows. Um, but I mean, actually, this reminds me of how did you guys think of like Taliesin's like conversion? Because I kind of thought the visuals of it were a little silly. I'll be
Mhm.
honest. He's just
Yeah.
like, ah. I'm just like, okay, that's
Right.
great. I feel
I
like I get some of it. It's just like the screaming, "This is burning me" type of thing. Almost is
mhm.
like, okay, this is interesting.
So I liked, in some ways I liked how they did it. I liked how they set up for it earlier.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was all in episode 1. So they set up for it early in episode 1 with his confrontation with presumably God, at the Standing Stones, and he sees this great light and he's kind of terrified of it. So then he goes and sees the window that's shaped like a cross, and through that window is shining a bright light. So through the cross is shining the bright light. And so visually, thematically, what they're doing with it, I appreciated that. But I also do agree, like the screamy burning arm thing was kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in some sense that how Taliesin and Merlin, the roles they play, is actually kind of more like Old Testament prophets.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of how they're set up, in a sense, right? Because they worship the one true God, right? Essentially, that
Yeah.
is the
Which
idea over the
actually,
druids.
you
So,
could even say that, and I wonder, I forget how, because there is a conversion scene for Merlin as well, or like a salvation scene, if you want to call it that, if I remember correctly in this show. But the one um, in the first episode with Taliesin is very similar to Road to Damascus
yeah, I knew you
with
could say
Saul.
Paul. Yeah. So,
So
yeah, it is similar in that sense. I mean, yeah, similar. No. But yeah, I don't
interesting.
know. I think the visual aspects of the magic were fine. But even like, yeah, I think even the idea of like yeah, because I swear, like in the books, until we get to Grail, that he's just like less and less and less magic, and that actually kind of comes up in but at the very end of the season, right?
Yeah.
Where it's this temptation in a sense.
Yeah.
Because that's the interesting thing, is it's like at the end it's presented as like an evil, like, ooh,
Yeah,
use your like evil magic, but like Merlin, like as a good guy, like uses magic like all throughout the show, like to slow things down, to like kill people, so as
Yeah.
it's there seems to be a bit of ambiguity there in how they're playing, which like I'm not objecting to this on a moral level or anything like that. I'm wondering like kind of what the thought process was behind some of that, because it did seem to be emphasized a little bit more than it was in the books.
Yeah. I don't know what their reasoning for it. I'd have to go watch the behind the scenes stuff
yeah.
again.
I mean,
I don't remember. I feel like I remember them giving some sort of reason for why they ramped up the magic. But it could just again be visual. We want people to be attracted to it.
I think
people like
visuals
fantasy. So
is yeah, right. Visuals and also just like kind of that's what people expect
yeah,
in my mind from a fantasy TV show. Right. I mean, flashy, like blam, blue, blah, woo, magic.
right.
Right. So
Fireball.
without it being completely garbage, right? And it's fine
Yeah.
actually in the show. So
Cool. Anything else on these first 2 episodes?
no, we're
And then
going an hour and a half, baby.
we'll try and speed it up here. I do feel like episode 3 was a bit slower, but also a bit more faithful to the book. So I appreciated that. Just let's see what other. I liked Miles Clahessy as Uther. I didn't care for the guy playing Aurelius to start with. It took me towards the end of the season. He started to grow on me a bit more. But I did like the
like
bond between them, the brotherly bond. Yeah.
Vibes, to be honest. Sorry. But I agree. He grew on
so
me.
it's so clear that Uther is played by an American actor. Like it just looks American. And then Aurelius looks very British, and so that was funny to me. But they did a decent job, and I like the bond between them, the brother relationship, because it is kind of the punchy back and forth, but at the same time they very clearly have a strong relationship.
And right, I do think he grows into his character, because I agree. Kind of initially, like I'm like. And I wouldn't say this guy's the High King of Britain. Like, look at this guy. Like, so, after that one cut later, yeah, I was like, what the heck? And he looks like this one guy. He looks like one of the hosts. Not to disparage this host at all, of this like one like Mormon podcast. Anyways, so, and I just like that's like who I was seeing every time I watched. I was like, what? So, anyways,
other thoughts on this? Well, I don't like the swords. I think that they look bad. I think that they look cast and not forged, and I don't think that they look terribly good. Even though they're supposedly designed exactly like they're described in the books, they look like the blade is very thick.
Yeah,
I just not a fan of the swords. And the Sword of Britain, the one that Maximus has and Aurelius later has, is very weird design. It's a very weird shape of the sword
at all. Really, which is what it would be. I do. This one takes a decidedly Arthurian turn.
Yes.
Right. This one feels more Arthurian. The first 2 episodes, not a ton.
Well, I mean, we're dealing directly with Arthurian characters. Uther, Merlin. It's we're very clearly setting up for where that's to go. Although we don't get so many of the seeds planted. Like we don't meet Igraine in this episode. I don't remember what they call her in this series, but it's something
and Vortigern, is that in episode 3?
Yes, that is right. Yeah, so. And actually, that wasn't the Vortigern section. It's in a future one where they're fighting. Is it Pendragon? I forget who they're going to fight, and the Uther decides to fight as a soldier, not as the leader. I think that must be in the books as well, but that I really enjoyed the way that they portrayed that. That's I think in a future episode, but a couple other little, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the episodes 3, 4, and 5 like really ran together for me. Like I have a hard time distinguishing between those 3. And one of the things that Boring has talked about is that like these books were super influential on him, which is why it was like a passion project for him, but that they came about right around the same time. He discovered them around the same time, if I remember correctly, as he watched Braveheart in the 90s. And these like the middle section of this show reads very, very Braveheart to me, which like is fine. Like I love Braveheart. But like when they're like gathering the clans and assembling them and stuff, I'm like, oh yeah. Braveheart. I see that.
I've never watched Braveheart yet. I will. I just keep forgetting to. But along those same lines, I actually have a note here. Rose Reed's performance as Kyrus reminds me of Connie Nielsen in Gladiator. So we're getting similar things there. So
Gladiator is like Roman Braveheart.
Right. So, right. One other note about casting. Young Merlin, I thought he did a really good job, but he also reminded me of Asa Butterfield as Mordred from Merlin TV series, and I don't like Asa Butterfield.
Asa Butterfield's in the Merlin show?
He is. Yep.
Because I thought that he kind of looked like him from, because I know him from like Hugo and Ender's Game. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah.
You will recognize like most of the faces in Merlin if you go watch that show, and I do recommend it. There's tons of them that are like Harry Potter actors, and so you'll just see him and you're like, oh, I know that person. I was the opposite for me because I watched Merlin before I watched Harry Potter, so I went and watched Harry Potter and was like, oh, I recognize this person and this person.
Yeah, the only time I ever seen Colin, the main character, what's his last name? Colin plays Merlin in BBC.
Morgan.
Colin Morgan, yeah. The only other time I've seen him though in anything was in some like actual like stage performance of The Tempest. I was like, what the hell is Merlin doing here? And he was like the sprites, I think. It's been a minute since I've watched The Tempest. So
Interesting.
I was like, okay.
I have a whole treatment for how you could make another season of Merlin very easily. At least one season, but we don't need to go into that since that's not what we're talking about here. Any thoughts on episode 3? Any other thoughts on episode 3, or shall we just continue into the other two that kind of blurred together with it?
I can't really remember particulars about episode 3 besides the fact that that's the wall scene with Vortigern, sorry, if I'm remembering correctly. So, which is not badly done. I think that scene is it is kind of the focus, if I remember correctly, of the episode. So
that Vortigern story with Merlin meeting Vortigern and digging the well and everything, that's a very common thread in the Arthurian mythos.
Right.
Monmouth does it, Stuart does it. I'm sure there's many others who do it that I am just not aware of because I haven't read them all yet. But as with everything in the Pendragon Cycle, Lawhead's adaptation of these Arthurian events is interesting and usually fairly accurate to the older, like the Monmouth or the Mallory, but done with through a more Christian lens. And so I like seeing how the different writers adapt it. They call them cycles when you're referring to Arthurian mythology, you talk about the different cycles of this story, and that's what it feels like when every time you see a new story that has all these same beats. And like the Sword and the Stone, Stuart does it in a very different way, but that also is kind of weird. Gemmell in his Stones of Power duology does the Sword and the Stone very differently, but it's also kind of interesting. And so it's just cool to see how each of the different writers adapt those things. Anyways, that's going off on an Arthurian tangent, but
I mean, no, it makes sense to compare it to the other stuff, which is why we've brought up BBC's Merlin a couple times. But like, no, I think it does this sequence rather well. I can't remember. Does that boy that kills Vortigern ever come back up? I don't remember. Is it just like a random kid? I can't remember how it goes in the book.
I didn't pay attention.
I can't remember in the
book
book for
back
that.
up.
Yeah. So ignominious death.
Okay, a couple things about episode 4. They had to give us the glamour shots of the guys without their shirts on just to show how ripped they are. That was absolutely part of it. Morgan is very creepy. Uther didn't seem to have a lot of range in this episode. Peleus, this is where Peleus starts to shine. I love Peleus in this show, and this 4th episode is just like becomes one of my favorite characters. We finally get the Fisher King. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. See, I'm kind of like Sam. Those middle ones are kind of blending together. Is this the one where they have that fight sequence with Peleus and Uther and the other? Okay, yeah. I liked that sequence, and Peleus he is good at that one.
Yeah. We get the Fisher King, which is another piece of Arthurian lore that I love and that people don't tend to explore enough. It's very, I mean, like even BBC Merlin, they do the Fisher King, but it's like one episode and then and like not even an important piece of the episode. So it's just interesting. But I love the Fisher King stuff. Good music again, and then the Saxon raid at the end, which is the one where the Saxons come raid the village near to the Summerlands, and Uther runs in and fights them all alone. Or not Uther, Aurelius runs in and fights them all alone. I thought that was weird. It felt like they sped it up in editing, and it was just like really jumpy, and it may have been my computer while I was watching it. I'm not sure, but it just felt kind of weird.
There's a couple of spots where there's like clunky editing. It's not like, every episode, or it certainly isn't like, a short film made by like a film student or anything like that. But there are a couple of moments, especially in some of the fights, where, there's just a an edit that's a little bit off. And that one with Aurelius, I do remember feeling, oh, well, okay, it's
and that's what I I laughed first of all because I just went and watched a student film that I was extra in last night, and so laughing when you said that, but also specifically there was something about that I was going to say. That's what I am talking about, where they say, oh, the quality of this is so high, it's such good quality, and I'm like, yes it is, but it's also not as high as they say. That's the type of thing that I'm talking about. There's just these little things here and there. But yeah,
this is the and is the next episode the one where you've got Merlin and sort of like the attack at the gates? Is that episode 5?
I think that's episode 4, where
so that is this episode. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the one where they just roll up and start attacking everyone, right?
Mm-hmm. It's because Uther or Aurelius goes to the Summer Kingdom to treat with them, and then Uther is tasked with getting all the tribes together, all the war bands or kings or whatever they're called.
Yeah. I don't feel like that narration is done the best in some sense, because honestly, it just looks like they're the bad guy.
Yes.
Like, to be honest, they literally just like roll up and then they just start attacking pretty much. Or they just sit there like awkwardly. They're like, hey guys, like they have this like weird little like thing, and then they just start attacking. Like, this reminds me of the opening, like one, or not the opening, but the really early sequence of The Northman. If you've seen that, when they just like go to this like Slavic village and just slaughter everyone, I'm just like, holy crap, like what? Like, but I mean, like they're the good guys, obviously, right? But like, I don't know, that it could have been portrayed a little better, I think.
Well, if you want to talk about a gory movie, Liam, I think The Northman might have Pendragon Cycle.
Well, I was expecting it in The Northman.
Okay.
I do like the portrayal, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but I think it's like the Battle Awen or whatever, when he goes into his battle trance and everything slows down. I do like the way that they're portraying that, because I've seen that sort of thing done in other series, movies, whatever, and it's not done very well. It doesn't still feel dangerous. Mm-hmm. And however they chose to do it with the show, it felt like he was still in the midst of a battle. But and a part of that's because you see like an arrow right by his eye type thing, and so just I thought that was well done.
It is done
just a little non story related thing, but that I appreciated the way that they. That's more of a movie making, a filmmaking thing that I'm noticing.
Yeah,
my favorite character in episode 4 is the bunny that they kill.
Yes. That played a very crucial role. You know what the crucial role was, right? It's so you can see Uther without a shirt on.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately,
which, to be fair, they're all jacked, so I can't of course they're going to do it. All right, well, episode 5 then. This is the one where it's the Aurelius battles Gorlas. That's the final confrontation of this episode. But there's a whole bunch of stuff with the scheming of the other kings trying to be like, no, this guy isn't worthy. He can't be the king, the High King. And there's a whole bunch of that type of stuff. And I think they do a fairly good job of it, even though some of it is like they're supposed to be kind of talking out of the way behind people's backs, but they're not far enough away to not be heard, and they're talking too loud type stuff. But again, they're doing that from so that the audio is picked up properly type stuff. So it's fine. This is the one though that I really noticed Tom Sharp coming into his own as an actor and just like really taking control of that character and the lead role of the series. Gorlas confrontation is very brutal. In fact, more brutal than I remembered it being in the books. I didn't remember him losing fingers or his eye, but okay.
I think it's done well, though. I think that
it is
very balance as far as like morals, in a sense, of a duel. It's like, okay, how do you come out of this like with the best possible advantage?
But at the same time, we're looking at that from our modern perspective of morality, whereas their medieval England things are a little bit different, a little bit more brutal.
It's
So
Britain.
you kind of
Anyways,
yes, it's medieval Britain, not England yet. Which the funny thing is,
wow, this guy's a
since
Saxon.
I've been
He's T.
actually I'm not, I'm Welsh, and that's what I'm going to bring up here. Since I started studying Arthurian lore a little bit more, I'm realizing that I never wanted to be Welsh because like I always thought
They
the
lose.
Scots were cooler. And so I was like,
They
I
lose
never
too.
wanted to be Welsh,
Sorry.
the Welsh or anything like that. Even though I'm also Scottish, but my last name is Welsh. Anyways, since finding out that these are the original Britons, the Welsh are the original Britons, I'm like, okay, I'm okay with it now. So,
Yeah, Welsh is just an English name. It means like foreign, kind of.
This is the episode with the Merlin going to his father-in-law's kingdom, right?
No, that's the next episode. No, it's not. It is this episode. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
But then the next one is
note
the
that
big
at all.
flashback.
Yes,
Yeah.
the next one's the big flashback. That's right.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
this is the strongest adaptation change that they made. Obviously, we've read the books, so we know about the history with what's his wife's name? Is it Ganyetta?
Ganyetta, yeah.
Yeah. So this whole like mystery of like, you know, obviously he's having very Braveheart-esque visions of Ganyetta because that happens to William Wallace in Braveheart. So like you've got that throughout the series, but then this big question of like, okay, like what happened to Merlin? Like obviously something happened that made him go insane and went off into hiding, and then that confrontation is really brought to a front when he goes to his, I forget the king's name, but to his father-in-law. And it really, it's very dramatic, ramps up the mystery of it, the whole sequence on the dock in the lake and all of that. That was the other scene that like really gave me chills from the series, is when the guy shoots out of the water.
Righteous indignation.
And then he cuts off Castennin's arm. And I was not expecting that either, because I don't remember that from the book, but maybe it was there.
I don't
another brutal, gory sequence that I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this then.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely some good stuff in this episode with adapting things to tell a story in a different medium, especially.
Yeah, and that's leading up still to the main flashback. Is that episode 6?
Yeah,
episode 6 is Merlin's flashback.
Yeah, because you're getting hints of it throughout. So it must have been the episode before that then, where he has like his little like his ontological change, right? Where he is in the water and he gets his haircut and by his father and stuff.
No, that's the last episode.
Is that the last episode? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Well, whatever. That's still like, in some sense, like the change would have been nice to see then, maybe, which is why I'm assuming, or I assumed that it would have been nice to see before that return to his father-in-law, because it doesn't make a ton of sense, actually, in some sense when it's happening. Actually, to be completely honest, when he gets back to his father-in-law, and that scene is really cool. I completely freaking forgot who that was for a second. I was like, who the hell is it? What is going on? Like,
you don't really know what his connection is at that point.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, why is this guy so mad at Merlin? What is going on here? So
on the note of the getting his haircut, I'll skip to that in this last episode real quick, but my somewhat sarcastic but also kind of genuine comment on that is brilliant choice to pause the battle and watch Merlin take a bath, because you do, but at the same time it does actually really work well with the sequence. Plus you get more of Taliesin, and he's just the best, and I wish we had more time with him. But yeah,
well, I mean, it's like a baptism scene.
Yes, yeah, right.
Which it does work. So,
which I guess Merlin's sidekick also got when he was almost drowned. But
yeah.
All right. Episode 6. This is the flashback episode. Once again, Merlin actor Tom Sharp is excellent in it. Brett Cooper also does a fantastic job, and you can tell she's having a blast on set, just acting. You can just, my note is, you can see it on her face how much she is enjoying it. Plus, she's excellent in the role. I don't really have any notes. It starts off when you first meet her. I'm not entirely sure that I like her as the character. But as the episode progresses, she definitely grows on me as the character. But even from that first moment you see her, you're just like, it's so obvious how much fun she's having as an actress in that moment.
Well, it did surprise me, to be perfectly honest, how, because like her character doesn't fill up a substantial part of the book Merlin, but like to be frank, I expected her to be in the show more. So the fact that she's in essentially one episode and then like 3 flashbacks, yeah, because I know she's in a bunch of the marketing material, and like, you know, hey, like, valid. There's a bunch of people who are fans of her for various reasons. Yep. But yeah, no, I thought she did a good job, and I know the filmmaker said that they felt like episode 6 was the highlight of the show. It was the strongest single episode, and there's definitely a case to be made for that.
It was also written by Rose Reed, the actress for Karis. So, well, not solely, like she didn't just sit down and write the whole thing. Obviously, they had other writers helping her and stuff, but that was her episode, kind of. Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's one of the better episodes, I think. Yeah, I do think she did a good job. I think in some ways, if I'm remembering correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've already been wrong. Is that okay? So she dies at the end, and then that's the big fight with Merlin fighting off like the Saxons single-handedly. Yeah, I think it all flows together pretty nicely. And her death scene was not as gruesome as it was in the books.
No, and it's not as impactful either. It's not as hard hitting.
It's pretty bad still.
It is. I mean, it absolutely shocked me when you
so like still a great book, but like it's kind of shocking. It's actually a really interesting contrast, more so in the book because of how shocking it is. It's equally contrasted with Merlin's birth. And it's just and you're like, okay, yeah, well, I see why Merlin is insane, right? Like, it's like
I do think maybe part of why it didn't hit no, because they basically tell you about it, tell you that it happened in the earlier episodes, and so maybe that's part of it. But part of why it wasn't as hard hitting for me is because I knew it was coming from having read the books. I think maybe if you didn't know, especially if you didn't know the manner and the brutality of it in the books, it would be a little bit more shocking in the show than it was to me. But even with that, I got to the end of the episode and just like sat there while the credits rolled, trying to process the whole of that episode. And I did that with every episode, but it was particularly notable in episode 6 there.
Right. I mean, I do think it is less impactful in some sense, because I remember, at least it has been a minute since I read the books, but like in the books, it's like okay, like I kind of have an idea of where this character's arc's going to go, but I'm not sure, right? You know what I mean? It's like, please don't happen. Oh, look, we're good. No, don't. No, no, fine. No. You know, like, and then it's awful at the end. You're like, like, so, but so it is a bit more impactful in the books, which, I mean, there's in some sense more time to work with. I mean, like in reality, you could do the whole book for one season and a longer season than 7 episodes. So
that's purely a budget thing for them. They're trying to get through so much of it at a reasonable budget so that they could
turn a profit.
Turn a profit and hopefully make more. And because of that, I get it. I do. But I really wish we would have had a full season for at minimum of 8 episode season for Taliesin, minimum of 8 episode season for Merlin. Preferably 10 to 12 would have been better for it. But I get why they didn't, even as much as I wanted. We haven't really touched on the Hillfolk at all.
I was
yet
thinking about this. Yeah.
Any thoughts on it? Because so the one thing that I did not pay any attention to in the book at all was the swirl. And so every time I saw it on him in the show, I'm like, what is this blue swirl on his cheek for? Like, didn't ever make note of that in the books whatsoever. And so seeing that that's where it came from, it made me understand a little bit more why it's there and it's absolutely there as a to make you ask questions about the series. But
do you know, anyways, you seem to know maybe more about the behind the scenes than even I do. Do you know, did they actually get like little people to play?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't look at that at all.
because I don't know, man. It sure seemed like it. You know, like in Lord of the Rings, like if you watch those movies, like it's pretty obvious they're using visual tricks rather than
Right.
hiring Warwick Davis, like it's say in Willow, and this
He's
seems
also in
more.
Merlin.
Or
Oh,
Davis for like
of
5
course
roles
he
or
is.
something.
Yeah. So no, I liked, because the hill folk section would be very difficult to adapt because it's in a book it works, but if you're
Mhm.
taking that as just a straightforward adaptation of Merlin, it's like, okay, we're gonna like stop and like side quest for an episode and then come back. So kind of cutting it up, some of his backstory, and then putting it in through flashbacks is the best way to do that.
Yeah. And this is absolutely a piece where condensing it was beneficial to the medium.
Yeah.
So yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, I like the hill folk, and I like, I mean, the initial like they were gonna sacrifice this young boy, right? And then like a lightning strikes, and it's like, never mind, we're not gonna sacrifice this young boy, right? Like like I just think, and then even like the sequence when Merlin's older, right? It's the older actor, right? And he's still with them because he spends years with him, right? That they go to this local chieftain or whoever person to do some healing, and it doesn't work out, right? Obviously, they're too late, and yeah, I don't know. I do think it works well as a flashback. I do like that they were included. Actually, when they popped up on the screen, I was like, I forgot about this.
Well,
I
yeah,
completely forgot.
I honestly thought that was going to be, as much as influential as that is on the life of Merlin. It's absolutely something that with
Right.
most other adaptions they would cut it, and
Yeah,
so I'm
right.
glad to see that they didn't.
Right, it gives them a good sense of mystique.
Yeah.
That he kind of already has.
Well,
Right.
because they are in the books, the hillfolk are fairies, just like
Yeah, are they called she? I can't remember.
I think so. I think they
Okay.
are.
It's like they're fairies, just like the Atlanteans or the elves. Like
Exactly.
we know
Exactly.
what we're doing here. It's
Yeah.
like they're kind of elves,
They're all
Yeah.
fae folk, and I mean that's kind of brings us back to
Right.
the Atlanteans north of the wall, Custennin and his crew. Custennin, that actor does a great job playing the Fae and Perilous Lord, and does a good job with that. Again, casting, I don't really have a problem with any of the casting in the show. There wasn't really any. Sometimes it took a couple episodes for me to appreciate the actor in the role, but for the most part, all of them I thought did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about like I mean, it's just a given though. When you read the books and when you read a lot of modern, especially modern Arthurian, like they kind of try to be more historical, that the Saxons are just like kind of cartoony barbarians, right?
Yes.
And they're nothing besides that, which is fair because I'm not really like a huge fan of we're gonna humanize our enemies, like type of
Right.
thing, right? Like because I mean, it wouldn't help the story at all really here. It's just like kind of funny just how barbaric they act and they look sometimes. It's like this
Yeah.
is so cliche, but it's whatever. That's exactly what I expected. So we'll just go with the cliche.
Yeah, it's basically just the Saxons out of like the 2004 King Arthur movie with Clive Owen and Keira Knightley. Like it's essentially the same shtick.
Yeah, which I mean, I get it. All right, I mean, because actually, when you read a lot of those like medieval like romances, there aren't even Saxons most of the time. There's like Saracens, and it makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
But it makes sense to the readers because the Saracens were the enemies at the time, right? So
Yes.
in like, but historically at the time period when Arthur would have been alive, that would not have been the case.
The thing that always made me laugh was the actor who played Hengist or Hengist was short. He was shorter than a lot of his henchmen, and that just made me laugh every time because like he's supposed to be the warlord and yet he's short.
You're a short guy. Yeah, no, I'm not complaining about the Saxons. I just think it's funny
No.
because it's just what you do. You talk about King Arthur and the Saxons are the bad guys, even though like the people who have at least recent, I would say for a good long while, have co-opted Arthur as their guy for the longest time are Saxons, right? They're not the Britons, really. So
What do you guys think of like it's not hitting you over the head with this, but like, Christianity is a major part of the Lawhead books and of this show. And you guys are probably more well versed in the Arthurian myth and the history behind it than I am. So did it strike you as being like, okay, this is sounding like modern day pseudo evangelical Christianity just put in a fantasy setting, or did it seem like authentic to the history and to the how Arthur's usually done?
Um, I didn't think it was. I think it was handled rather well in the show. Sometimes in the books, actually, I thought it was like, wow, look, Merlin's got magical Jesus powers, right? Um, but in the show, it doesn't really come off like that in my mind, and that's not a terrible thing in the books either. The most of the thing I normally complain about in like Arthurian stuff is how unchristian they make it, right? It's just like, okay, like you obviously don't know one, the historical time period, or the historical like stuff that the most popular stuff like Chrétien de Troyes or Mallory, right? Like it's all insanely Christian because they're all Christians, right? I mean, like even at this time, like the Roman Empire, they had converted to Christianity. Wow, surprising. Right? And so like I think it's fine in the show at least, and I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really like because sometimes in the book I'm like, wow, like I said, it's just like, okay, cool, yeah, this guy's the best wizard because it's Jesus, But I didn't really get that vibe in the book or in the show rather. So
Yeah, I definitely feel I can't speak to the historicity of it, but I definitely feel like it was an appropriate level for the story that was being told. It was done in a way that was not preachy. It was done in a way that was fitting for the story being told, while also clearly not ignoring that because it is such a integral part of that story and of Lawhead's adaptation or
right,
cycle of the myth.
yeah.
So
I
it
mean,
didn't bother me at all
I
with
think
it.
it could have even been more Christian
Right.
almost and still been fine, right? Because I mean, like in reality, I mean, like in historical reality, one of the unifying factors of the Britons probably would have been that they were Christian and the Saxons were pagan, right?
Yeah.
So then maybe there were still some pagans. I'm sure there were still some pagan Britons, right? You know what I mean? But like as far as urban centers are concerned, probably not a lot. Um, right. And so they're like, okay, we're going to unify as a body of Christians in a sense because the Saxons over there are going to slaughter us. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, and that would have made perfect sense for me, and they don't really go that route. But
I was gonna say, Liam, when you say like authors who don't understand this or who misrepresent it, it wouldn't happen to rhyme with Bernard Schmermwell at all, would it?
oh
Like
no,
the name you're
never.
thinking of?
Yeah, oh my gosh, his he's so angsty and it's so cringe. Oh my gosh. But it's so normal in our secularized world that like people literally just don't notice, right? They read that trilogy and like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm like, ah, well, this is really like frustrating to read, but okay.
To be honest, though, I am a Christian, and so the Christian aspects don't really bother me to begin with. So there is that as well.
Well, you would have to be deliberately, surgically removing it from an adaptation if you were going to avoid covering it. If you're adapting Lawhead's books, like it's there and
and
it's an important part of the books.
and it would change the book. So I mean, it would basically be one of the many other Hollywood adaptations today where they are not even an adaptation anymore. They're loosely inspired by,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it definitely it needs to be there in order for the series to be called the Pendragon Cycle in the way that it is. But I definitely didn't feel overdone or preachy. Even there were some times where it's like, oh, this is clearly he's like what's the priest's name, David. He was clearly preaching, but it wasn't preachy to the audience in the same way, and so
Yeah.
then
Yeah, no.
never bothered me. And
Yeah, I think
I do get annoyed by people preaching at you, whether it's Christianity or some other agenda or religion or that does annoy me in stories when the story is more focused on preaching than it is about telling the story. So
yeah. No, I mean, I think it worked fine, and I think it works well. Again, my only really complaint about it was that I just thought the weird conversion of Taliesin was weird.
yeah,
Like, I mean, but yeah, it's not like yeah, because I can. I mean, I'm also a Christian, right? And so like I can also be like I can say like when a Calvinist comes up and harasses you for stupid reasons that's cringe as hell. But like it's like what do I expect? Like I expected this. It fits my expectations in a sense because it makes sense where my expectations are, and I feel like I'm reasonably informed, right? If I was reading a book or watching a TV show set 5,000 years ago on the Pontic steppe about the Yamnaya, like I wouldn't expect them to act Christian at all. You know what I mean? Like, and that wouldn't offend me.
yeah,
Now, I don't want it to be gratuitously, violent, I guess, but like just
right.
expectations.
I think, and maybe this is the historical angle, but the one way it could have been improved is if they'd ended the show with a Newsboys concert singing "God's Not Dead." You know, that
Yeah.
would have been
That
that would have
for
sealed
sure.
the deal for me.
That would have helped so much.
That would have been like greatest of all time meme right there, actually.
Like Rickroll everyone, you know.
All right, moving on to episode 7 real quick. There's a lot of stuff in here. I have a lot of notes. I don't really think I need to go over them all, but because music is such an important part of the series, with Taliesin and Merlin both being bards and Halfdan technically as well, Merlin, the sound mixing for Merlin's song was off, and that annoyed me. Again, it may have been my computer actually, because I watched that sequence again. Oh no, I didn't. I listened to that sequence again, and the song itself is I don't have any problem with. But watching it on my computer, I didn't. For some reason, things didn't seem like they were syncing up perfectly, or the transition from people talking to Merlin singing was a little wonky. But that's neither here nor there in terms of the story being told. It's just another one of those, the quality is not quite as high as they claim it to be type things. Yeah. And then interestingly enough with that it was not quite as, Merlin's song was not quite as impactful as I was hoping it would be. I mean, we waited 7 episodes to hear Merlin sing.
It's kind of a quieter song.
And it wasn't as powerful as expecting and hoping, but I still ended up getting chills. And just again, especially when the army started singing later, and when Uther brings it up, that part really got me. It's like, okay, this is what I'm looking for with the music and the importance of music in this show.
Yeah, and that may read like, especially to a modern audience, like that could, like, as I was watching, I was like, man, some people are gonna think this is like cheesy as hell. But like, what? Sorry to keep banging this drum, but what it reminded me of was like Braveheart. Like, that's one of the things about Braveheart, is that it is like 110. Like, there's some cheesy things in Braveheart, and it's like one of my favorite movies. But like, it is 110% utterly sincere with its like depiction of like heroism and chivalry and masculinity and fighting for what you believe in and all of those things. And like, this just felt like right in line with that. So yeah, I loved how utterly sincere they play all of those moments.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is how much does it resonate in a sense, right? And I think overall it works pretty well. I still have a hard time seeing Aurelius not as a soy boy, but I mean, but overall it still works for the most part. I think actually this one has a nice ending in a sense, right? We get our Morg character more focus, and then also what is his name actually? Her son-in-law.
That's a cool twist.
That should be Lot. That should be Lot.
Okay, that would make sense.
But it should.
I like his arc, even though it's relatively straightforward. I mean,
and they don't really tell it. It's just
right.
He was this way and now he's different, and
right. So it's still nice in a sense, because it's like some.
They
like,
did that a lot of times with this final battle, though. They did the same thing with the battle between Aurelius and Hengist. They just completely decided that wasn't important. Kind of a weird choice. Also, there's a scene where all the Saxons are running towards the camp with all the medics and everything, and then they just cut, and who knows what happened there. I mean, the last thing you saw was Karis pulling out the sword and getting ready to fight them all by herself, and then it just cuts away from that, and we never go back, and we never see the resolution to that.
You must have did a good job.
So there's some things like that that final battle, it felt rushed. There was this whole episode felt rushed in a lot of ways. They're getting to that final moment of the flash forward, the vision, Merlin's vision of the future.
That's maybe my biggest. Yeah, that's maybe my biggest quibble with the show, is that the ending just felt like, and we're done. I was like, wait, really? You sure there isn't like an epilogue or something else that got filmed or cut out in the editing room? Because it felt like it was like building, wind up, and then like the vision, and that's it. It felt,
And
the ending felt pretty abrupt to me.
if we knew with 100% certainty that we were getting a second season in a reasonable amount of time, it wouldn't be so much of an issue.
Mhm.
But with the ambiguity and the uncertainty of there still being a second season, it's a poor ending for a series that overall has been fairly good.
Like,
Yeah.
have either of you guys watched the show Twin Peaks?
No.
It's like, it's, you know, totally a different thing, but I've been watching it recently, and like season 1 of Twin Peaks kind of ends in a similar way, where there's a character and he like opens the door and somebody's there with a gun and he shoots him, and then credits roll, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you can't.
Yeah, there's
Obviously, Twin Peaks gets more seasons, so like I was
Right.
thinking of that when I was watching this, where I was like, are we gonna wrap up any of the other
Right.
things, or is it just
Right.
it?
It's kind of like the terminal climax, no denouement, right? I
Mhm.
mean, essentially, and I agree to you that if there's a second season, it's probably fine. Without a second season, it's a bit impotent.
Because we don't even conclude the story of the episode, because we go Merlin sees Agerna, is what they call her in here. He sees Agerna, and that causes his vision of the future, and then the vision of the future ends and the episode's over. So we don't even go back to finish off what's going on in the final moments of that episode.
Well, we get the
it's a
stabbing of the
weird
sword,
choice.
right?
Yeah.
And then okay.
A couple other notes regarding this: a strangely, openly, conveniently cleared battle plane for them, just surrounded by trees, but this one cube is opened up. That's
Makes
kind of
sense to
weird.
me.
Have you guys ever seen the it's almost a homemade movie, but the movie Pendragon, Sword of His Father by
No,
Burns
I never
Family
even
Studios?
heard of it.
Okay, have you guys heard of the movie Beyond the Mask?
Yes,
Okay,
No.
so
decent movie too.
yeah, so Pendragon, Sword of His Father was the movie these guys made before Beyond the Mask.
Gotcha.
It's pretty low budget. It's worth a laugh, man. Like, I liked it when I was 10 and tried rewatching as an adult and just like laughed my butt off the whole way through. And it pulls a lot from like Wahhead's very obviously, but the last battle in it, which is supposed to be Badone Hill or Gone Hill, whatever it is, the last battle in that movie is staged almost exactly like this
Nice.
one. And this being a direct adaptation of the books, and that one being like half Lord of the Rings, half Wahhead's books, I'm like, the final, and like, it's of no fault to this show, but it cracked me up watching this. Be like, wow, it's like the perfect like trees lighting up with the two like armies, and the way the Saxons come out and everything is like the Pendragon movie.
Confrontation between Merlin and Morgan in this one, which was basically Merlin and Gagnetta the whole time until she creepily turned back into Morgan. I thought that was a good sequence as well. Well done. Even though, and this is a weird thing, I think the actress who does Morgan is very good at playing the creepy Morgan, but sometimes her performance isn't as strong as the rest of the actors, which is just a weird little thing. I notice it as an actor. I notice it from paying attention to people's performances and trying to understand what they're doing. But it was a weird thing that I noticed. Although this is the one where no, it's not. It's an earlier episode where we get her really creepy moment with the Dark God. Just yeah, but this one has some really creepy stuff with that as well. And her son, is it her son that?
Oh,
I don't know. That was playing with the crab and the.
Oh yeah. That scene
was
through
creepy.
the door where she's talking to the Dark God and she's like seemingly naked,
right?
What you can tell, or mostly naked, and I'm like, oh, this is so weird.
It's weird. I mean, there definitely were some.
Well, makes sense for a witch.
Right. There's definitely some. It's creative choices that are made that are a little bit strange.
Well, I mean,
I probably would have done them differently, but at the same time, it's effective because it very much shows how creepy that stuff was.
I mean, it's effective in showing you that she's creepy. I don't know if it's effective that much in actually showing you how powerful she is, right? I mean, because she's mostly just a background player, and like she shows up at the final battle as this temptation, but that's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
outside of those first couple episodes too, right? I mean, like,
And there's a
is
good
she
bit
like
of
actually
setup,
much of a threat? I
right?
don't know.
Because there's a good bit of setup for her in the early episodes to have her essentially be a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
And not much else.
Yeah, that's true. Which, in fact, that's how she is used in the books as well. You get her mostly in Grail, is where she's active, magically active, and she's shape-shifting in that book as well. She spoilers for any who haven't read the book yet. She's Nimue in the books, and then she can basically convinces Merlin to follow her as Nimue, and then tries to trick him into, I don't remember what, but she's creepy and does that same sort of stuff in the book as well as in Grail especially. But there's a lot of stuff. Grail, I've talked about my thoughts on Grail already, but that's an interesting book. The whole Grail quest is always interesting to me. It's very weird, very spiritual in a weird way, and I love it. And I also feel icky almost when I'm reading it. Any time, any version of it, it's weird. I'm excited to see what they do with it if they ever get there in this series, though, in the show.
Yeah, well, she's the one in Broceliande Forest. Is that this book series? I don't know.
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, my favorite Grail ones are actually. I think Lawhead does an okay Grail, but my favorite Grail ones are the early ones where it's just Percival being the doofus that he is, very honest doofus.
You've read more of the Grail quests than I have. I primarily know it from Mallory.
Yeah. Galahad's a later guy. He's a later invention. But...
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Any other thoughts that are worth bringing up? It's kind of weird. The love triangles are always weird. I don't think that it was done particularly poorly in this show, though. Kind of, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of setup for her liking Aurelius, because you hadn't seen them meet before that. But then Uther just kind of assumes that. I don't know, but it didn't bother me. I was fine with it. I think kind of this is the High King. She's maybe a little bit of a gold digger trying to become the wife of the High King, and
she's understandable by his glory.
So, yeah. So I don't know.
Weird. I kind of forgot about that.
She did a good job, though. She did a decent job. The actress did a decent job.
That's
Gorlas is crazy. He's a beast in the show.
So I was just gonna say that's maybe the one thing that I actually don't love that Lawhead changes from some Arthur stories, is that he makes Arthur not be a bastard son. He's like, properly, nobly born as far as that goes. And I do like the bastard element of Arthur's birth in some versions of myth, and it kind of ties it to King David too. And so I do like that element. So, the show is kind of obviously setting up for later seasons where you have that, but just to make a comment on the book, if I had to quibble with something,
Lawhead does clean it up a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he even addresses that directly. There's a section where it's either in Merlin or it's in the first, like the beginning pages of Arthur, where he says, yeah, this is how some people say that the story goes. This is not the real story. This is the real story. Right. I don't know. I don't hate it, because Lawhead has a clear vision for why he's doing it the way that he's doing it. And again, because of that story focus, it doesn't bother me. Yeah. So that's most of what I've got. Gratuitous violence at times, which we've already talked about. That's pretty much most of it, what I've got. I do want another season really bad. I would love to have another season. I think it's a good adaptation, a good show, and a good Arthurian series. Not perfect, not the best thing ever, but really solid, and I'm glad that it exists. Very glad that it exists.
Yeah. I would watch a second season I was happy to watch it. I will say that I don't know if I would rewatch it,
Mhm.
but I'll be honest, I don't rewatch a lot of anything, so that's not like saying the show sucks or anything. But yeah, I was happy with it.
I think I will rewatch it. If for no other reason than, I mentioned being positive but not overwhelmingly so. Um, I find that that can happen to me with things that I have really high expectations for. Like to be perfectly frank, I find that this happens when I watch like The Chosen, because
Mhm.
I'll have an idea for how I think, I would adapt or embellish a Bible story if I were gonna like tell it in a movie or a TV show version. And then when I see how they do it, I'm like, huh, what? Like tilt. And then if I like rewatch it, I'm like, oh, actually, that does work really well. And so I think if I were to rewatch even this, I think I would probably end up more positive than, and I'm still positive on it, but I think I would end up even more so on a rewatch.
Sure.
Cool. Well, let's pop this one up because I have it built out in already. One thing you genuinely enjoyed. This is a dig at Rings of Power season 1 because that show was
It's difficult.
egregiously bad. but but just something that stood out to you as very enjoyable. And I'll try and say a different one.
Um, well, I'll just say, like, broadly speaking, just, the Arthurian myth is very, very worthwhile, in my mind as a myth. It's always nice to see more of it, even in some cases when it's done terribly, like in Cornwell. But, it's nice to see it taken a bit more seriously, though. It's not, like, deconstructed. I mean, Lawhead obviously has his point. I mean, the producers here obviously had their desire for the show, but, it's just nice to see. Yeah, I mean, it's also nice to see, I mean, like, how it's different in a sense, right? I mean, the Arthurian myth is well, it's a kind of like your typical myth, which is to say it's not unified in
Mhm.
some sense,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can play with it, you can fill in holes. I mean, that's what Taliesin's doing, right? And it's just nice to see another take and another addition in a sense.
Yeah. And sort of along those lines, like I said, they're books that I love. And so it's nice to see that there's enough other people who love them that they thought it was worth making a show of. I guess one thing that I'll say that I genuinely loved, and maybe this is where I differ from you guys a little bit, I loved Karis in the show. I thought Rose Reed did a really good job. Liam, you commented about the costume design choices for her. I felt like some of that, because I did notice that, and I felt like some of that was trying to make her seem more young and youthful and like a gal in her young 20s versus when she's supposed to be so much older and a bit more mature and wise. And it's not to say people can't have their objections, like I hear your point, but I did like her portrayal of the character. And to be perfectly frank, I she was a highlight of the show for me. Just the way that she played the character, I found to be um pretty moving. But all the actors did a really good job. But yeah.
I actually agree. It just took her several episodes for me to get to the point where she was the character that I remember from the books. Um, but I do think that she did an excellent job, especially with the scripts that she was given. The character, the writing for the character, I thought that she did a fantastic job as an actress portraying what was written for her. So I absolutely agree with you in that respect. Um, Things that I liked, we already touched on the music. I thought the music was fantastic. Even the songs that they sing, where I do have quibbles for them, I appreciate them greatly. But the soundtrack for I mean, I've listened to the soundtrack several times since
Mm.
watching this, just because I like it and I like what it's doing and the style that they're going for. I think that it works really well. Um, the thing that I guess I would point towards as something that I really liked is Taliesin and just seeing this character brought to screen, a character that was somebody I'd never heard of, someone that I didn't know anything about. I read the book, loved him in the book, just became a favorite character of mine, and then seeing his adaptation to screen, and I felt like he was very faithfully adapted. I felt that the actor was, other than the mustache, he didn't have the mustache that he has in the books. Um, but I thought the actor did a fantastic job portraying that character, and just the costume design. I loved his costume, but just a whole bunch of stuff. Everything about that character worked really well for me. That's not true. There's one moment where he's wearing his hood that he should not be wearing his hood, and that made me laugh. Yeah, but
Interesting.
it was the reason for for him wearing the hood in that moment was to visually distinguish him from the other characters around him, give him a different visual silhouette, and so it was a very much an intentional production, filmmaking choice that they made. But it just made me laugh because he shouldn't have been wearing the hood at that moment. But anyways, that's not important. Yeah, Taliesin was everybody. I thought everybody did a really good job, but Taliesin was my standout character for me. Well, cool. Any other thoughts? Any other final things we want to say regarding this show?
I'd say read the books if you somehow got all the way to the end of this video and haven't read the books or whatever. The books are worth reading. Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah. No, yes and amen. Season 2, please.
Yes. Well, I really hope that for some reason people watch this video on my channel and say, hey, I want to go watch this show, and the producers see this for some reason and say, hey, these 3 guys really like this show, we should make it for them. Make another season just so they can watch it. Something like that would be nice. Not going to happen, but it would be nice. One can dream. In fact, that's an important piece of the story is dreaming, the vision of Taliesin. So does anybody have their copy of Taliesin or Aurelia at hand? Do you want to read the dream, the vision?
You got it, Liam, or you want me to?
I have a copy and pasted in my reviews, but
all right, go for it. You'll find it faster than I will.
Okay, there is a land shining with goodness, where each man protects his brother's dignity as his own, where war and want have ceased and all races live under the same law of love and honor. It is a land bright with truth, where a man's word is his pledge and falsehood is banished, where children sleep safe in their mother's arms and never know fear or pain. It is a land where kings extend their hands in justice rather than reach for the sword, where mercy, kindness, and compassion flow like deep water over the land. And men revere virtue, revere truth, revere beauty above comfort, pleasure, or selfish gain. A land where peace reigns in the hearts of men, where faith blazes like a beacon from every hill, and love like a fire from every hearth, where the true God is worshipped and his ways acclaimed by all.
I mean, it's so good. It's so impactful. Yeah. Well, thank you both for coming on. If they ever make another season, hopefully we can do this again. If you want to, maybe you don't. But thank you very much for coming on. It's very enjoyable for me, and I definitely had been looking forward to this since we started talking about it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
All right. Well, let's see. Now I have to remember how to close it out. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and adaptation stuff sometimes on Wednesday. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.